We moved a fair amount when I was young. My dad worked in mills, and he was always trying to get a better job.
Thompson, Georgia.
Yep.
Robbins, North Carolina.
Yes.
Did it occur to you at some point, I think I'd like to get out of here? I think I'd rather not be in a small southern town. I want bigger, I want different, I want whatever. Or did that just seem perfectly fine for life?
Seemed perfectly fine. It did not occur to me that I needed to live somewhere else. When I was young, I worked in the mill some myself, summer and part-time kind of work. So I had a lot of people around me saying, you got to go to college, otherwise you're going to be doing this the rest of your life. Really good, wise people saying that to me. But I never thought of that as going away and not coming back. I think at that point I thought, if I go away, get an education, I'll probably come back.
You talk often when you're campaigning about being the son of a mill worker. But were you truly poor?
My father had to borrow money from somebody, $50 if I remember right, to get me, my mother out of the hospital. And I've been back to the house that he took us home to. It was a two-room house, little house in a mill village. And we didn't have squat back then. But that changed over time.
Do you remember ever, I can't have that. We can't afford that. I must want for that. Ever when you were a kid?
We went on Sunday after church, one Sunday, to Sunday dinner. And we went to a local restaurant. We were all dressed up. I had my suit and my tie on. And we sat there for about 5 minutes. My father had been very quiet. He said, we have to leave. And I didn't understand what was going on. And he said, we have to leave. And he finally said, I can't pay these prices. And so put the menus down. We had to get up and leave. And I just remember at the time being incredibly embarrassed, thinking everybody in the place was staring at us and trying to figure out what it is, why is it we had to get up and leave.
Does that change you in any way?
I think it does change you. I think what had more effect on me than that, than wanting material things, was when I saw when I was growing up the way my father was treated, because he didn't have a college education, and the way some of the men and women in the mill who worked with him, who he loved, were treated. And that, I think, had a more profound effect on the way I viewed the world.
Edwards did go away to college. He started at Clemson University in South Carolina, hoping for a football scholarship.
After getting the crap beat out of me over and over on the football field, I figured out I was too little and not fast enough. I learned the hard way. That
What's your weight?
I probably weighed about 155, 160.
And those linemen weighed 220 pounds.
At least.
When 220 pounds hits 160, usually 220 wins.
All I remember is they were fast and they were big. And I was small and I was slow. That's what I remember.
Edwards transferred to North Carolina State and majored, of all things, in textiles.
You thought of college as a way to get a job, not an intellectual exercise. And so the whole idea was to get a degree in something that would allow me to support my family. I had this dream in the back of my head of going to law school, but it felt very distant at that point.
What'd you know of the law? Coming up from a small town in South Carolina, I mean, beyond Perry Mason and the Defenders.
Well, you just eliminated what I knew. That's what I knew. I mean, I knew what was on television.
So you go to law school at University of North Carolina.
That's right.
Now, you're the kid from the small town.
Yeah, I was the hick. When I went away to college, it felt like everyone was smarter than me. Certainly felt that way in law school. And I thought, I didn't belong here. I don't belong here. What am I doing here? And so I dealt with it the same way I dealt with everything during my life, is I just worked harder as hard as I knew how. And that's how I dealt with the feeling that those around me were smarter and better than me.
You met this girl in law school.
I did.
4 years older than you.
That's true.
Who would have the temerity to think that a girl 4 years older, 4 years smarter, 4 years more experienced, who comes from a more cosmopolitan world than the hick from Robbins, North Carolina, would be interested in you?
Yeah. Well, she wasn't to begin with. I mean, I can't even remember how many times I asked her out before she finally said yes. And I think she did it out of pity, honestly, more than anything else. And the first time we went out, I took her to a place to dance where you couldn't hear anything. The music was so loud. I was dressed the way you would expect somebody from my background to be dressed, and she still gives me a hard time about that.
How were you dressed?
I don't remember exactly, but I think I had on one of these coats with the suede, you know, those suede insets on the, because I thought that was, you know, debonair. I thought that was the way, you know, if you really wanted to impress somebody, that's what you did. The issue of
Edwards had immediate success with the law, winning huge awards for clients in personal injury cases.
I won some big cases, started getting some big cases as a result. It got to the place where I thought I was unbeatable, and then I lost in a big case where a young man who was in a really bad place was affected. And I figured out very quickly that I was not unbeatable, far from it.
Humbling?
Humbling, very humbling. Humbling when you have to walk out of the jury decision and go tell your client that you lost.
Did it make you doubt yourself in any way?
In many ways. It made me doubt, first of all, it made me think I was too full of myself, which it was true, I was. It also made me doubt whether I'd done the kind of work that I needed to do. I had, but I always had found that if I worked hard enough and was the best prepared, most knowledgeable person in the courtroom, that it translated to victory. And in this case, it didn't. And that was hard for me to accept.
And then tragedy came into his life.
Fair to say that the most important, most profound event of your life was 1996?
April 4th, 1996.
Edward's 16-year-old son Wade was killed that day in an automobile accident.
In the beginning, it pervaded everything. I mean, there wasn't 20 minutes that went by in a day that I wasn't thinking about him and being extraordinarily sad. That lasted for months. The best analogy I've heard is it's like somebody cut off your leg, and then you say 5 years later, well, are you healed? And you say, well, it doesn't hurt anymore, but I've gotten used to it, but it never goes away.